Welcome back to another episode of Living in Denver. As always, my name is Adam, licensed realtor here in Denver, but more importantly, a 40-plus year Colorado native. Can't believe I've been in the Mile High City for that long. But I gotta tell you guys, there's a few things that have changed significantly over the years as I've lived here in Denver, Colorado. And there's definitely a few that I want to share with you today that are on my list of the worst things about Denver. So in this video, I'll be sharing with you the 3 worst things about living in Denver going into 2025. You're not going to want to miss this episode, so stay tuned. All right, so as I said, this video is going to be all about the worst. I'm a positive guy, but I got to tell you guys, this video is going to be a little negative, so hope you're okay with that, so buckle up. But again, the top 3 worst things about living in Denver. Now, I'm 40-plus year Colorado native, as I said a minute ago, and I'm still here, and I don't plan on going anywhere, so I don't want this video to come off as a don't move here type video, but I think there are some very important points that I want to share with you on things to consider, and it might be enough to help make that decision on whether or not Denver's the place for you. So before we get started though, all that info that's popping up down below, as always, I'm available 24/7 to connect with you. I would love the opportunity to do so. And even if you aren't seriously considering Denver right now, today, to move to, I know there's still some ways that I can provide value. So make sure you guys reach out, text, call, email, whatever's most convenient. And if that still feels like too much of a commitment to reach out to me directly, I also have a brand new relocation guide that just has 20 of the best neighborhoods according to myself and also some of my other fellow friends that are locals and natives of Denver. We've shared all of that info in this guide, and I'll give you guys a free copy just by clicking the link down below in the show notes. So make sure you at least do that because there's some great value you can get from that free relocation guide. But let's go ahead and get started again. My number 1 of these 3 worst things about Denver, Colorado, it's going to be the traffic and the congestion. And I got to think, if you asked, other locals from other cities around the country, what are some of the biggest changes they've seen? I'm sure this is probably something that's pretty consistent with anywhere around the country, at least anywhere in cities that are seeing significant popularity and growth. So traffic and congestion is just something that really just kind of bothers me to the point where I'm very intentional about when I'm trying to travel to different parts of the city.
Oh, darn. Hey, Hosea! Away!
And especially trying to get up to the mountains, up to the western slope, which is why a lot of us do still choose to live in Denver. It's not to be necessarily in Denver, but it's for the great accessibility and access we have to the mountains. Skiing, mountain biking, hiking, whatever it may be, there's so much that Denver can offer you with just a short drive up to the mountains if you time it right. If you don't time it right, that 1 hour to 1.5 hour drive could all of a sudden turn into 4 or maybe even 5 or 6 hours stuck on a parking lot on I-70, and nobody has time for that. So obviously traffic and congestion are a big talking point for probably a lot of other videos you've seen and just, something that's on your radar. But I want to go a little bit different direction. First off, I just want to talk about how nowadays it's not just this very typical, 5 to 6 p.m. rush hour time slot that is always going to be bad with traffic. In Denver recently, it just seems like no matter what time of day, and it always tends to be when you have to be somewhere, you just run into just this horrible traffic and congestion. There's definitely a few reasons for that. One of them is just the population and just the growth of our city, but also because we are continuously growing and having new construction developments all over town, there's just a lot of delays when it comes to improvements of different road projects going on, different developments going up. There's just so much construction and development that there's always going to be areas within Denver that you're going to run into some significant delays on the road. But outside of this city specifically, the reason I really wanted to put this on my list of top 3 worst things about Denver, it's not necessarily Denver, it's getting from Denver to the mountains. As I said a few minutes ago, what could just be a 1 to 1.5 hour trip to the mountains sometimes can turn into 4 or even 5 hours, which is just ridiculous. And especially when you're excited to get up in the morning and go on a fun day skiing with friends, when all of a sudden that, 6 a.m. wake up call and expecting to get to the mountain before the first lifts start turning at, 8:30, all of a sudden now you're still on the highway at 8:30 and you got another hour and a half to go. It just ruins the day in a lot of scenarios. So I think this is just something that I personally have noticed the most, and this really bugs me. And, unfortunately, there's no way around it other than just being more intentional. One way to do this is just to, if you're on a budget, get some friends together and just try and find a condo in the mountains, in the high country. So maybe drive up on a Friday evening, stay up there, and then you're just within a few minutes of getting to the chairlift on Saturday morning. So if that's possible, that's always my preferred recommendation and what to do if you are concerned about traffic. But another thing I'll share with you is nowadays, everybody has such different work schedules. A lot of times you can maybe try and figure out a way where instead of working Monday to Friday, maybe you're able to take a Wednesday off and maybe work a little bit on Saturday. A lot of people work from home these days. So for some of you, that might be an option. That's something that I've tried to do in the last couple of years, especially after COVID, and so much more remote work is now a big thing here in Denver, as is anywhere in the country. So that's something that you can always, get around, because the traffic going up to the ski hill still is, for the most part, a Friday afternoon and then all day Saturday and Sunday type issue. Going up the mountains in the morning, going home in the evening. So, they'll always be aware of that if you are going to be going skiing. And nowadays, it's not just ski traffic. 20 years ago, it was really just the skiing in the winter that had this significant, issue with just traffic and the volume of cars on the road. But nowadays, it really can be any season. In the fall, it could be people driving up on the weekends to look at the fall colors. In the summertime, it could just be people going up to the different ski towns to enjoy the summer activities going on. There really is stuff all 4 seasons here in Colorado that gets people from Denver to go up to the mountains. So just be aware of that. And that's definitely something that has just bugged me a little bit more recently. And that's why I'm on my soapbox today and putting this as one of my 3 worst things about living in Denver. So going into number 2, my second worst thing about living in Denver is going to be just the high cost of living. And, we're seeing this all over the country, especially with recently inflation being higher and just the cost to survive with groceries and gas and just all the other living expenses being higher than what we're accustomed to. Denver's no exception to that, and is definitely an expensive place to live. So there's definitely sticker shock for both renters and buyers. Denver's housing prices have just seen such this dramatic rise that, many longtime locals like myself who have really just been priced out of their own neighborhoods. Even smaller starter homes that were once affordable are now seeing price tags that rival, some of these bigger cities like Chicago and Seattle. So just the sticker shock of not just buying homes, but also renting has just significantly gone up over the past decade and really priced out a lot of people. For a lot of people that might own a house, let's just say a $500,000 home that's older, that needs a lot of upkeep and renovations just to kind of get it to the standard of what people are looking for in today's buyer's market. If they were to sell, there's nowhere that they can buy for that same dollar amount without going significantly out of town and just really uprooting their entire lives. So a lot of people, because of that, are just really staying in their homes until they get to an age of retirement, or maybe even moving into assisted living or to a totally different part of the country. So there's some of that going on too, where people are just priced out of any other option than just staying in the home that they currently have. Denver has also definitely become a city where the housing market has outpaced the average income of what people are making here in Denver. So it's, again, just a very challenging place for people to call home if they are trying to be homeowners and buy something. A couple years ago, when it was a crazy buyer's market and there was multiple offers within a day of every house going on the market, every single offer was cash offer, and it really was frustrating a lot of buyers that just didn't have the same level of resources with family or friend, people helping them put a cash offer together. So nowadays, we're definitely seeing a little bit more of a balanced market here in Denver. So definitely not that extreme that it was a few years ago, but still the average income is not keeping up with the housing prices. So it is a challenging place to purchase for a lot of people. Now, Denver's not alone here, but as I said, there's always just additional costs of living. And with Denver, we've also seen some unique things, such as insurance costs going way up. We've had a lot of wildfires, as well as hail, just different, weather events that have really brought up the premiums on home insurance, and just stuff like that that's adding up to the just overall cost of living and the affordability here in Denver, Colorado. And then the last thing I'll mention before moving on, just on this topic of the cost of living, if you are considering moving to Denver, you're probably moving here because you have some aspirations to get into some hobbies, skiing, maybe mountain biking, whatever it may be. What a lot of people don't realize is there is a significant cost associated with those activities. I'll use skiing as an example. It's not just buying a ski pass and going up the hill every weekend. There's a lot of other costs involved. It's the cost of gas in the car, just having a car that's capable of going up on the weekends. The cost of buying your equipment, having safe, quality skis, boots, bindings, poles, helmet, gear, your pants, your gloves, your jacket. If you're totally starting off from ground zero, don't have any of this stuff, we're talking several $1,000s just to be outfitted with a kind of a basic level of equipment and ability to get out and enjoy skiing. Ski passes have also gone sky high over the last few years. I lived up in Aspen for a long time, and that was always known as one of the most expensive, places to live and also to ski. Up there, then the season passes for an unlimited, going as much as you want for a season, were about $2,000. But more importantly, I think even more dramatic to think about, the single one-day lift ticket last year for some of the mountains, such as Aspen, Vale, Beaver Creek, even Breckenridge and Keystone, was almost $300 for one day. So you think about a family of four, some of the kiddos, maybe two kiddos and a mom and dad, maybe the kiddos are brand new, they need full day lessons. We're talking several $100s, if not even more for lessons. It could be a several $1,000 experience just for even 1 or 2 days on the ski slope. So, a lot of people just don't realize how expensive some of these hobbies can be. So definitely wanted just to add that as another reason why, Denver can be very expensive if you want to come here and really enjoy all the benefits of being here and so close to the Rocky Mountains. All right, and then my third and final worst thing about Denver is going to be just the weather extremes. So weather is one of these things, it can be a pro, it can be a con. And even in my life, I look at it on both ends of the spectrum. There's some great things about just having this diversity in weather and just keeping you a little bit more on your toes and just enjoying how every day is not guaranteed to be, a certain way. And it could be beautiful sunny day today and it could be hail or snow tomorrow. So there's just this weather extreme and just uncertainty when it comes to living in Denver that for a lot of people can really turn them off. When people think of Colorado, they think of the cold and the snow when we talk about bad weather, but really it is a lot more than just rain and snow. We have incredibly hot days in the summer now. We had, I think, almost 100 days over 90 degrees this past year. We have a ton of hail, some pretty windy days. And one thing that's something that not that many people talk about is so many wildfires recently on the western side of the United States, as well as even as far up north as Canada, where we are in this jet stream where in certain times of the summer, we just get hit with incredible levels of smoke. There's an app on your phone that predicts the air quality and in certain scenarios tells you to not even go outside if the air quality is so bad. And we had a few days like that this past year. On one day, I think it said that we were the top 3 worst air qualities in the entire world for that day. So the smoke that we get in Colorado from wildfires, both locally here in Colorado, as well as just in the surrounding states, and again, even as far north as Canada, can really affect just the quality of life when you're living here in Denver, especially if you have any sort of respiratory issues or just health concerns. And then also talking about the flip side of this, not the snow, but just the sunshine. It's definitely a very big positive and a pro of Colorado is that we have 300 days of sunshine a year. What a lot of people don't talk about, though, is the high elevation that Denver has, as well as even higher altitudes up in the mountains and the high country. You're much more exposed when it comes to potentially getting sunburned and just getting even heat exhaustion from that sun. So, something that is very, very important always is to make sure you guys are bringing sunscreen. And if you're up in the high country, for example, skiing in the springtime in March and April, and maybe you don't have your helmet on and you maybe don't even have your hat on, I'm speaking out of personal experience here. It is very easy to get significant sunburns from your snow goggles, as well as just not even realizing that you are so exposed, especially in the wintertime because you're not hot because you are outside and you got cool weather touching your skin, yet you are just as vulnerable when it comes to that sun exposure and potentially getting sunburned. Another thing on the weather topic that people don't realize is the surprise spring storms that we get. You know, beautiful, beautiful time of year here in Colorado is the March, April months where you start to see flowers budding and you know that spring is just around the corner. But without fail, every year, for the most part, we always get these surprise storms in April and even in as late as May, where we have significant blizzards where we might get even a couple feet of snow in these later months. So it's just something that's very unpredictable, and every year is different, but pretty much every year you at least get one or two of these very late season storms. And it's just another thing that can kind of be a bummer. You know, you're already starting to work on your yard, or you're just trying to commute and get around and you just get hit with a foot or two of very heavy, thick, wet snow. You know, there's a big difference. If you guys are somewhere right now living that has snow, I think you might know what I'm referring to here, where you have the champagne powder, which is the nice fluffy snow that you see on Hallmark movies or in, you know, different Hollywood movies where people are skiing, just light and fluffy and beautiful. In the springtime though, these heavy, thick, just snowstorms that are really just a pain in the butt more than anything, because it's usually about, 6 inches of snow, and then below that it's about 6 inches of just water. And if you're living in a house that has certain directions of your driveway, for example, if your driveway is facing to the south versus the north, there's just little things like this that you really have to take into consideration, because you might get stuck with a driveway that just will not melt. And if it freezes, melts, it might turn into just an absolute ice rink. It could be a huge, huge, huge pain for you to get that finally cleared, which might take days, if not weeks. I had a house a few years back that just was horrible when it came to this, very shady, and the snow would just, fall. I didn't get it, shoveled in time, or maybe I had somebody come over to visit and they drove on my driveway before I had a chance to clear it. It would just turn into an absolute disaster, and literally would be out there with, a crowbar, and it would be just the most grueling manual labor you can imagine. And it could take several days just to get it off of the driveway. So little stuff like this that you guys probably already know about, but I just wanted to make it clear today. And part of this number 3 reason of one of the worst things about living in Colorado is just these weather extremes. All right, so hopefully, despite being a pretty upbeat, positive guy, hopefully I didn't come across too negative in today's video, but I did want to share with you guys those 3 worst things about living in Denver. So just as a quick recap, number 1, it was the traffic and congestion, and just how it is so much dramatically different than Denver was 20 years ago when I was growing up here as a kid. That was number 1. Number 2, we're talking about just the high cost of living and how expensive it is for so many people to ever achieve the American dream of home ownership here in Denver. And then number 3, last but definitely not least, just the extreme weather that we get here in Denver, as well as all of Colorado, and how that can also play into just your quality of life, especially if you don't want to break your back by shoveling snow for 2 or 3 hours a day, if you live in a home that has that shady driveway scenario that I was sharing with you guys earlier. So all 3 of these are definitely things to consider. Hopefully they're at least just things to think about and put on your radar. But with all that being said, Denver is still an incredible place to live, and is why I still choose to call it home after over 40 years. I hope you guys at least give a chance to come out and see for yourselves, maybe even come a couple different times of the year to really get a different perspective on what it's like here in the summer versus the winter, and just see for yourselves, what in your life really are the biggest factors in making that decision on where your next home is going to be. But guys, if you have any questions at all, I would love the opportunity to share more on all of this stuff with you. And as I said earlier, make sure you guys download that free copy of my relocation guide, over 20 neighborhoods, going in depth on my favorite bars, restaurants, parks, trails, all that good stuff, completely free. So download a free copy. It's down below in the show notes. And don't forget, hit that like and the subscribe button so you're the first to receive a brand new episode every single week, all about living in Denver. Look forward to seeing you guys next week. As always, my name is Adam Lang, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye.